Hi, I just wanted to talk to you a little bit about mixing genres. So, mixing genres is actually really common when it comes to writing, and it's going to be pretty rare when you only stick to one solitary genre and never veer into something else when you write. The key when you're going to be mixing more than one genre in some assignment that you do is that one genre should dominate. The audience should be able to tell overall this is the main purpose of what this writer's trying to do. But you'll use subgenres to support or enhance that primary genre. So the one thing that you need to watch out for, well, maybe more than one thing, but an important thing that you need to watch out for when you do this sort of mixing is you need to watch out for the organization. So while it's good to use more than one genre to get your point across, what can hinder that important message to the audience is when those different genres seem disorganized or there aren't these clear connections between these subgenres and the main genre that you're trying to accomplish. So, just as an example, in this profile essay that you guys are starting to think about right now, obviously that profile is going to be your dominant genre. That more than anything, the audience needs to know that this is a profile essay. But I can see how you might, and probably will, use some other subgenres to help make that impression that you're trying to get across in the profile stronger. So, I'm guessing you'll probably be doing some narrating, right? Like where you're telling the story of your subject, whoever or whatever that is. You may be doing some evaluating, right? Like talking about what's good and bad about a place or an event that you're describing. Last week's learning activity talked about reflecting, this idea of thinking something through. I think that's probably going to be happening, especially as you're observing your subject for your profile. And then I think just on a basic level, you'll have to do some reporting where you give just basic information about a subject and maybe do a little bit of research to convey facts and information. So I wanted to show you an example of a piece of writing that uses several different genres to see how this might work. So this is an article actually from Newsweek by this pretty famous writer named Anna Quindlen. It's called Write for Your Life. And she's talking about this movie and it was a book to start out with called Freedom Writers. Some of you may have seen it before. So what you're going to see is that she has an overall or main purpose, and she has a primary genre here, which is she's trying to make an argument. That's the main thing that she's trying to do. And she's trying to make this argument that writing helps us to understand ourselves and helps us work through, some of our own issues, right? So that's her main goal. But what I want to show you is that she does several other things within this one piece of writing to help enhance that argument. So just by kind of looking at this, maybe you can see how this might work in real writing. So this, and again, I'm going to have to be scrolling down a little bit here. This first paragraph, and really maybe like the first part of the essay as a whole, you're going to see she's using this genre of textual analysis. So you guys have written a literary analysis. Remember that you can analyze any sort of text, and a text doesn't have to be something written. Here she's talking about the movie. But what you're going to see is she's going to start out by doing an analysis and showing how that helps support her argument, which is like her main reason for writing this. So if you remember, like key elements of an analysis are that any sort of analysis should offer an interpretation. So you're going to see she's like interpreting the movie here. And a good analysis should give specific textual evidence, usually in the form of quotations. So you're going to see her doing that too. So let me just read this out loud and you follow along here. The new movie Freedom Writers isn't entirely about the themes the trailers suggest. It isn't only about gang warfare and racial tensions and tolerance. It isn't only about the difference one good teacher can make in the life of one messed up kid. Freedom Writers is about the power of writing in the lives of ordinary people. So again, right there, she's starting to hint at her argument, like showing that writing is important for people on a personal level, right? But and again, when she says that, she's also offering interpretation. She's interpreting what she thinks the overall meaning is of this movie, Freedom Writers, that it's about the power of writing. And again, she's going to defend that later on when she starts giving these quotes, okay? That's a lesson that everyone needs. The movie and the book from which it was taken track the education of a young teacher named Erin Gruwell, who shows up shiny new to face a class of what are called in pedagogical jargon, at-risk students. It's a mixed bag of Latino, Asian, and Black teenagers with one feckless white kid thrown in. They ignore, belittle, and dismiss her as she proffers lesson plans and reading materials seriously out of step with the homelessness, drug use, and violence that are the stuff of their precarious existences. So you notice there's also some summary in there too, right? Which, you do in a lot of different genres. And then one day she gives them all marbled composition books and the assignment to write their lives, ungraded, unjudged, and the world breaks open. So here she's giving, sort of these lines from diary entries that are mentioned in the movie. And again, this is like based on a real life incident with this teacher, but things from these diaries like, my probation officer thinks he's slick. He swears he's an expert on gangs. Sorry, diary, I was going to try not to do it tonight, but the little baggie of white powder is calling my name. If you pull up my shirt sleeves and look at my arms, you will see black and blue marks. The words eviction notice stopped me dead in my tracks. When I was younger, they would lock me up in the closet because they wanted to get high and beat up on each other. So again, she's giving specific textual evidence from the movie showing like that these kids are writing about what's happened to them as a way to figure themselves out. So it says, Ms. G, as the kids call her, embraced a concept that has been lost in modern life. Writing can make pain tolerable, confusion clearer, and the self stronger. So right there, that sentence seems to be tying these two genres together. While the stuff that came previously, that was analysis, like analyzing the movie, now she's showing how it's related to her overall point or argument that, writing is a way for people to figure themselves out and make themselves kind of unburdened by the bad things in their lives, right? So now, this next section, she's going to do some reporting. And again, she's going to give some information, explain some phenomenon, right? So she's going to talk about how in the past, people used to do more personal writing, like writing letters, that sort of thing, and how that letter writing has fallen out of favor a lot, but now maybe it's being replaced a little bit more with like email and texting and all that other stuff. And again, she's going to show how this is relevant to her point that writing is important for people to cope with the things in their lives. So again, this is reporting here. How is it at a time when clarity and strength go begging that we have moved so far from everyday prose? Social critics might trace this back to the demise of letter writing. The details of housekeeping and child rearing, the rigors of war and work, advice to friends and family. None was slated for publication. They were communications that gave shape to life by describing it for others. So again, she's just explaining, like in the past, this is what happened. People wrote letters a lot to talk about their day-to-day lives. But as the letter fell out of favor and education became professionalized, with its goal less the expansion of the mind than the acquisition of a job, writing began to be seen largely as the purview of writers. Writing at work also became so stylistically removed from the story of our lives that the two seem to have nothing in common. Corporate prose conformed to an equation. Information times polysyllabic words plus tortured syntax. Aren't you impressed? So again, she's kind of like saying that this more personal writing has been replaced with like workplace writing, or this writing that's not so focused on figuring yourself out, right? So again, she's stating these facts to help support her point that writing is important and for us personally, and if we get away from that, it's going to be a loss in a lot of ways, right? So the next paragraph, she's going to use a different genre here. She's going to talk about reflecting. So she says, and again, reflecting is like thinking through some subject, right? And in the age of the telephone, most communication became evanescent, gone into thin air, no matter how important or heartfelt. Think of all those people inside the World Trade Center saying goodbye by phone. If only in the blizzard of paper that followed the collapse of the buildings, a letter had fallen from the sky for every family member and friend, something to hold on to, something to read and reread, something real. Words on paper confer a kind of immortality. Wouldn't all of us love to have a journal, a memoir, a letter from those we've loved and lost? Shouldn't all of us leave a bit of that behind? Again, you see, like, every time she uses some new genre, here she's like reflecting on, like, you know, isn't it important sometimes to have like a physical piece of writing from someone you care about? Again, she's using that to support this like, overall argument that writing helps us figure things out in our lives and makes us more content, right? So then, again, we won't read like all the rest of it here, but really then the rest of her essay talks about her argument, where she really comes out and says in several different ways how important writing is for us to do just as human beings, right? So we'll look at just a couple places. She's quoting this guy, Don DeLillo, who says, "Writing is a form of personal freedom. It frees us from the mass identity we see in the making all around us." So again, she's like giving different reasons why writing is important. She says, in the end, writers will write not to be outlaw heroes of some underculture, but mainly to save themselves, to survive as individuals. Again, she comes back to the movie and talks about how these students who are kind of like labeled these troubled teens or at-risk students, that, you know, pretty much all of them were able to cope with the bad things that happened to them and be successful because Ms. G encouraged them to write their way through these problems. You know, in the end, she mentions there's like a famous scene and example in the movie that one of the students, you know, the professor, or Ms. G has the students read the diary of Anne Frank. And at first, it's, you know, students think it's going to be lame and like, how can I relate to this girl from so long ago? But then they actually start reading it, and this one girl comes in after actually reading the book and is furious because she feels betrayed and says, "Why didn't you tell me that Anne was going to die at the end?" You know, most of us, that's kind of like the one main thing we know about Anne Frank. This is why we have her diary, because she passed away. But again, it shows like how people can connect so much to writing and use that as a way to think about their own problems, right? And you know, she kind of ends the piece by saying, Anne Frank wrote her diary for the same reason the kids who called themselves freedom writers wrote in those composition books, to make sense of themselves. That's not just for writers, that's for people. Again, confirming this argument that she's trying to make about how important it is to have some outlet to figure yourself out. So yeah, again, this doesn't seem like jarring or confusing, even though she's using 3 or 4 different genres here. So again, I think the key is just always coming back to that main genre and showing how these subgenres are connected.